As Victoria Caelestis contemplated the cause behind the pillar of blue light appearing in the Black Rose Kingdom by the small pavilion on the edge of the mountain peak, a young lady with a slight resemblance snuck up on her. Suddenly, the young lady pounced once she reached within a few steps of Victoria. However, Victoria had already noticed the person's presence. Still, she chose not to evade the young creature's sneak attack. "What do you want this time, Valerie?" Victoria calmly asked as she was hugged affectionately from behind by her granddaughter, Valerie Caelestis, knowing she came with a purpose. Valerie Caelestis, the firstborn of Victoria's second daughter, Vivian Caelestis, she also shared the common trait of Darkans. After all, the great house of Caelestis was a household of Darkans and possibly the most publicly recognized and prominent Darkan household. "Grandma, I want to join the others on the trip to the Black Rose Kingdom," Valerie requested with a puppy look, hoping to soften Victoria's heart and receive her approval. Unfortunately, Victoria immediately frowned with strong disapproval when she heard Valerie's request. "Absolutely not." Victoria's firm rejection shook Valerie's heart, causing her eyes to turn dull with disappointment. But after a moment of consideration, she bit her lip stubbornly, and her eyes glazed with defiance. "Why can't I go when others can, Grandma?" Valerie argued. "Because it's too dangerous, and you are not nearly as strong enough," Victoria firmly stated with a stern, decisive glare. "But I am already a senior witch," Valeria stubbornly argued. "So what if you are a senior witch? Is a senior witch strong?" Victoria thundered before mentioning, "The Black Rose Kingdom has thousands of high witches now. Do you think becoming the youngest mid-stage senior witch in your current generation makes you strong, Valerie? Wake up. Without the backing of our great house, you are nothing on your own. The world is full of hungry wolves and scheming foxes. You will not survive very long out there while holding on to whatever pride you have as a member of our great house. And do not think that my words are harsh, I am trying to make you aware of the brutal reality to save your life. Your fourth aunt had also been a great talent, perhaps even the greatest talent our great house ever had since the dawn of magic. Everyone believed she would become a transcendent witch one day, but what happened to her in the end? When I let her out to experience the outside world, she fell in some unknown place and time before anyone could witness her full potential." Victoria bellowed loudly, eyes and tone filled with remorse and sorrow as she recalled the past. She blamed herself for each and every one of her children's deaths. She felt like she had failed them by not adequately preparing them and educating them well. Her fourth child, Vivian Caelestis, naturally wasn't the only child she had lost in her 333 years of life. In her life, Victoria Caelestis had given birth to 5 daughters and 3 sons. Given the low fertility of witches, producing 8 offspring in 300 years was considered somewhat impressive. Unfortunately, only 2 daughters were still living and breathing among the 5 daughters and 3 sons. The rest had met with untimely deaths one by one. "I only have you, your mother, and your third aunt left. I will not risk losing any more of my children and grandchildren. I have already lost too many," Victoria firmly stated without any intention of ever changing her mind. She was tired of seeing her children departing the world of the living before her. As such, for dangerous missions outside the family's territory, Victoria would only assign them to indirect descendants and outer members. After Valerie listened to her grandmother's words, her head somewhat cooled down before she frowned in thought. Being reminded of the untimely deaths of every direct member of the family who had ever gone out for experience, she couldn't help but have some doubts. "Grandma, isn't it strange that our family is always dying outside our territory despite our great prestige across the 7 witch kingdoms? Are we being targeted by someone?" Valerie asked. "That's right," another woman's voice answered from afar. Valerie and Victoria glanced over and found a beautiful, fairy-like lady approaching their location from some distance away. The lady appeared young but possessed an age that did not match her appearance, like Victoria. Furthermore, the lady shared some resemblance to Victoria. "Third Grandma," Valerie greeted respectfully upon the lady's arrival at their small pavilion by the edge of the mountain peak. The lady was Victoria Caelestis' younger sister, Vera Caelestis. She was also a powerful high witch like her siblings. Besides Vera Caelestis, Victoria also had an elder sister, who was the current acting head of the great house, and 3 other younger sisters. Vera Caelestis was the 3rd eldest child in their family. If their 9 brothers had not all passed away from old age, they would still be a family of 15 siblings. Their family wasn't small before the dawn of magic. In fact, their Caelestis family was even larger before Gehenna's appearance. It wasn't strange for a great house to have many direct family members of the same generation. After all, it was the oldest and most straightforward trick to building up a powerful, wealthy, or influential household. If one lacked the talents to create power, wealth, or influence, then one should produce an offspring who could. If having 1 wasn't enough, then have 3 more. If having 3 more still wasn't enough, then have an additional 5, and so on. In a bad pool of 10 children, if 9 turned out to be talentless idiots, the 10th child was bound to be a talent, at least. Vera Caelestis acknowledged her granddaughter's greeting with a casual nod before she shifted her attention to Victoria with a smile. "I knew I would find you here, second sister," Vera commented, implying she had been looking for her. But then, she looked back at Valerie to continue their topic, reaffirming her previous claim, "Our family is, indeed, being targeted. It's even possible that the ruler of every country on the continent wants everyone carrying the blood of Caelestis to die out," Vera added, startling Valerie. "Why?" Valerie furrowed her brows in confusion and doubt. "I don't remember learning about our family having big feuds with anyone. In fact, besides our relationship with the Black Rose Kingdom, which had become estranged, our great house of Caelestis seems to be on good terms with every other witch kingdom, third grandma. Hayes. Even if we are on good terms with others, it doesn't necessarily mean they won't secretly plot against us for their own interests. You don't need to be enemies for others to want to kill you, Victoria interjected with a sigh. That's right. Vera fully agreed before her eyes flickered with a fierce glint full of anger and hate. But if it wasn't for that damn prophecy made by that wretched old sack of decaying bones from the great Rathalos Empire, would our siblings, children, and grandchildren continuously die outside for no reason? Prophecy? What prophecy? Valerie blinked with a blank look. She had never heard of any prophecy. Moreover, exactly. What prophecy, huh? Vera added to Valerie's doubt with a helpless smile, shaking her head. Even she did not believe in the prophecy made by the chief shaman who lived in the great Rathalos Empire. Unfortunately, just because she didn't believe in the prophecy, it didn't mean it was the same for others, too. Furthermore, even if others didn't believe it, they couldn't ignore it either. The great Rathalos Empire's chief shaman previously prophesied that a human with high spatial affinity would be born and become this world's overlord, ruling all of the high skies, vast lands, and deep seas, Vera recounted. Valerie blinked as she waited, expecting her third grandmother to continue. But after waiting a brief moment, she realized that was all there was to the so-called prophecy. That's it. Valeria uttered dumbfoundedly before mentioning with a frown, but our Caelestis family wasn't specifically mentioned in this so-called prophecy. So, why are people only hunting our family? We aren't the only ones being secretly hunted outside of our territory, Valerie, Vera corrected with a soft sigh. Haven't you wondered why people with spatial affinity seem so rare nowadays? That's because they have been either killed or abducted by various forces in the last couple of hundred years. Our great house of Caelestis might look impressive, but we are at the mercy of every nation. If it weren't for our life-saving means and various agreements with other countries, our great house of Caelestis would have long ceased to exist in the first century of the magic era, Vera stated. In that instant, the revelation was like a bolt of lightning, shocking Valerie greatly when she heard it. She didn't expect the great house of Caelestis, which she was so proud of, to be in such a precarious situation. In order to ensure our independence and survival, the family made an oath to stay out of every country's management and politics. But at the same time, we also married off our family members to royalty of various countries to establish connections and acquire protection, Vera added. When the great Rathalos Empire's chief shaman's prophecy spread across the world, every country naturally eyed the biggest family with spatial affinity, the great house of Caelestis. Even if rulers didn't believe in prophecies, they would not be able to ignore the slightest possibility, whether it was for the sake of their personal or national interest. As such, if the great house of Caelestis had done nothing, they would have been swallowed by everyone. Anyone who enjoyed the highest position of power would never want to bow their heads to another. That's why selfish, ambitious rulers would never think about befriending the future overlord before the person could rise to power. Instead, they would try to control the person before they became aware of their destiny. And if they couldn't control the destined person, they would rather destroy them. However, thanks to the great house of Caelestis' great escaping ability and quick wit, Vera and her family evaded various encirclements countless times in the beginning. Although they were forced to abandon their homes during that period, they established the status of being uncatchable. With that advantage, they formed agreements with neighboring rulers and established connections through marriage bondings in secret. It was also because the marriage ceremonies were held in secret that the rulers failed to realize the great house of Caelestis made the same marriage agreement with other rulers besides themselves. As a result, they ended up letting the great house of Caelestis establish a situation where the rulers were forced to end their hunts on the great house of Caelestis and be on guard against each other. After all, after everything went public, they could no longer openly target the great house of Caelestis. Their citizens would scrutinize and condemn their actions against their in-laws, and other countries would also try to interfere with their operations once they learn of it. Under such circumstances, the great house of Caelestis no longer needed to run and was able to settle down. They only experience danger once they leave their territory. Nevertheless, after listening to Vera's additional information, Valerie immediately expressed her surprise. Does that mean I have many uncles, aunties, and cousins I didn't know about living outside the territory? Valerie uttered with wide eyes. However, Vera could only silently shake her head with a saddened look. Victoria also sighed with melancholy. Did I say something wrong? Valerie blinked with surprise after noticing her two grandmothers' expressions. After a moment, her brows crumpled together. Don't tell me they are also gone. Even with royal protection? That's just how it is for people with spatial affinity outside our territory, Vera said with a sad sigh. Rather than marrying their members to royal families, it was more accurate to say they had sacrificed them. After all, they made an oath to be uninvolved in other countries' management and politics. The family members they had married off would not have any power or authority. Even if they held the status of husband or wife of the princes and princesses, their lives were most likely equal to or worse than slaves. Poisoning, Vera suddenly stated, clenching her fist grudgingly. Most of your distant aunties, uncles, and cousins, whom you have never met, died to this, or at least, that was the reason we were given each time. Even if all the countries seem amicable to each other on the surface, they are all secretly competing against each other. How regretful it is that we have to face these kinds of situations when the world is facing a threat as large as Gehenna, Vera thought honestly. I don't get it, third grandma, Valerie replied with a deep frown before mentioning, if the prophecy was real, this destined overlord should be someone very powerful if the person is able to unify the world in the future. In that case, why are so many people with spatial affinity dying? Are all those pig brains trying to kill off a potential savior? Valerie cussed. It went without saying that if humanity had such a strong person, they would be less threatened by Gehenna. Alas, that question is the biggest doubt we have all these years. One cannot help but suspect something sinister and insidious is involved regarding this prophecy, Victoria said with narrowed eyes. People with spatial affinities were great assets to humanity. To kill them off would benefit none other than the demons from Gehenna. And unfortunately, none of us have the power to find out the real motive behind the chief shaman's prophecy, Vera said with a sad smile. That is the sad truth. Everyone was aware they lacked the power to unmask the truth, or rather, they couldn't afford to take on the risks and dangers. They were the pillars of the family. If they fell, the great house of Caelestis would become vulnerable. That was why they had chosen to stay within their territory and focus on stability and continuation. Humanity had so many people. How could the task of unmasking Gehenna's potential schemes fall on their shoulders alone? If their great house of Caelestis had a transcendent, everything would change. Previous chapter. After Valerie grasped the real situation regarding her great house of Caelestis, she realized how much of a sheltered life she had been living. At the same time, her strong desire to explore the outside world dwindled. Even though she still wished to go outside, she didn't want her stubborn insistence to trouble her beloved family. The dangers lurking outside their family's territory were beyond her imagination. Just as her grandmother had mentioned, her power as a senior witch was insignificant, it wouldn't cause any ripples in the vast world. She would not be able to count on it to preserve her life. Thus, even if she managed to convince her grandmothers to let her out, she would have to rely on the power of the family servants for protection, and even then, they would most likely not be strong enough to protect her from the dangers lurking outside. After giving up the idea to venture outside, Valerie felt a pensive sadness welling up inside her when she thought about the fallen family members married outside. Forget about their name and relation to her, she didn't even know of their existence even though they came from the same family. Wasn't that just sad? Third grandma, a Caelestis will forever be a Caelestis, even if they have been married outside the family. And their sacrifice must be remembered. Since everyone married outside had died, do we have a place to worship and remember them? I wish to pay my respects, Valerie sincerely requested. Vera smiled with gratification as she approved of her granddaughter's character. We do, Vera nodded and said, I can take you to our family's memorial hall later to pay respect to the dearly departed. However, I have to correct one thing, not everyone married outside the family is dead, Vera suddenly added shortly after. At the very least, your ninth grandpa's fourth daughter, Verity Weissman, which is to say, your aunt, Aunt Verity, is still living well in the Freedom Federation. Unlike everyone else, she was quite loved. As such, she was able to play a significant role in forming the Freedom Federation it is today. Furthermore, her son and granddaughter are also extremely talented individuals. Thus, her current position is quite untouchable. She is very safe, Vera added with a slight smile, feeling proud and a sense of loss. After all, her niece's achievements, wealth, and power no longer had anything to do with the great house of Caelestis after she was married away. Even if the person carried the blood of the Caelestis family, the person would only live for the Weissman family she was married into. Furthermore, they had zero contact for 200 years. Verity Weissman. Weissman. Valerie muttered with furrowed brows, finding the familiar. After a moment, her eyes widened in shocking realization. Isn't that the family name of Freedom Federation's current president, President Hugo? Valerie exclaimed with disbelief. Ah, yes. Aunt Verity's son, your distant cousin, is quite impressive, isn't he? Vera calmly nodded. Valerie's jaw dropped. The shocking revelation made her stand on the spot blankly for quite a while. During that time, Vera informed her older sister, Victoria, of the finalized preparations for the second team of elite servants, which was tasked to head to the Black Rose Kingdom. Recalling the previous topics discussed, Victoria suddenly entered a period of deep thought before she decided to write a confidential letter sealed in wax and entrusted it to the second team of elite servants. The second team of elite servants was tasked to deliver the letter to the Black Rose Kingdom's ruler as they carried out their primary objective. You want to borrow the Black Rose Transcendent Witch's power to discover the true motives of the Great Rathalos Empire's chief shaman, sister? Would she agree? Vera inquired. Victoria nodded, then suddenly shook her head. I don't know if she can do anything about it. But it won't hurt to ask. The more people know about it, the less burden we shoulder. Although I don't expect anything out of it, I still hope Queen Henrietta could do something about it. As do I, sister, Vera expressed. The Black Rose Kingdom appeared to be the center of the storm of changes in recent days. Given the borders between it and the Holy Night Empire were no longer restricted, access to other countries in Pangaea was also opened. As such, it truly was worth asking for help, even if nothing may come of it. After Vera finished her business with Victoria, she brought Valerie to the Memorial Hall, located in the most secure area underneath Black Dragon Peak. The entire underground area was fortified with defensive and complicated locking spells to prevent intruders. It was also off-limits to regular family members. As such, Valerie's curiosity was immediately piqued. She wondered why the Memorial Hall had such a huge emphasis on security. What secrets were hidden within? Naturally, since her third grandmother was willing to bring her to such a place, it didn't take long to learn why. Memorial Hall is divided into two areas. On your left are the rooms of the departed, and on your right are the rooms of the living, Vera casually introduced the place. The Memorial Hall contained dozens of rooms. Each room was small and only had a few shelves holding a varying number of magic fire lamps, all with names inscribed on them. Only after Valerie saw these magic fire lamps did she realize the importance of the place. These magic fire lamps were known as soul lamps, and they were produced to display one's life status. Once bound by blood, one soul lamp would continue to burn with a weak flame until they drew their last breath. Although Valerie had no knowledge of ever binding a soul lamp, she had indeed found one with her inscribed name in the third room of the living. It had a weak, flickering blue flame. Evidently, one of her grandmothers must have set it up for her when she was born. The fifth room is the one you are looking for, Valerie, Vera instructed as she witnessed her granddaughter heading to the first room of the departed. However, Valerie shook her head and continued approaching the first room. Since I'm here, I have to pay respect to everyone and not just a selected few, third grandma. Not doing so would be a bit inappropriate, Valerie stated. After Vera heard that, she smiled and no longer said anything. She simply watched in silence as her second sister's granddaughter entered each room to pay respect to the deceased one by one. However, after Valerie entered the seventh room briefly, she suddenly ran back out with surprise, startling Vera. Third grandma, one of the soul lamps in the seventh room of the departed is still burning. Was it incorrectly placed? Valerie asked hurriedly, pointing to the seventh room behind her. What? That's impossible. No one would make such a silly mistake, was what Vera said, but she still quickly strode into the seventh room to investigate. After all, seeing how well-mannered Valerie had been after learning the truth, she didn't believe Valerie wouldn't randomly spout nonsense or play such an awful prank. Upon entering the seventh room, Vera's gaze immediately fell on the soul-burning soul lamp inside. Although the fire of life was only a fraction of the size compared to Valerie's and every other burning soul lamp, it was undeniable that the soul lamp was still burning with the fire of life. The fire of life really is burning. Vera muttered with a dumbfounded look as her gaze slowly shifted down to the inscribed name below. The soul lamp belonged to Vivian Celestis, Victoria's fourth daughter and Valerie's fourth aunt. Does that mean my fourth aunt is still alive, third grandma? No. No? Valerie had asked with excitement, but Vera's answer immediately left her baffled with pending questions. Her fourth aunt's soul lamp was still burning, but her fourth aunt wasn't alive. Then what did the tiny fire of life imply? Shortly after Vivian Celestis's soul lamp was discovered to be burning with a rekindled fire of life, Vera immediately departed from the memorial hall to deliver the news to her second sister, Victoria. Second sister, you wouldn't believe what Valerie and I saw in the memorial hall, Vera quickly spouted upon arriving at the small pavilion. Vivian's soul lamp regained its small burning fire of life. Crack. Victoria's ceramic teacup of blue and white suddenly dropped and shattered into countless shards on the hard floor. The shocking news broke Victoria's calmness and shook her heart, causing her to leap to her feet in agitation. Is that really true, third sister? Please don't joke with me. Victoria grabbed Vera's shoulders and asked. You should see it for yourself, Vera said with a helpless smile. She wouldn't joke about such a matter, and she was aware her second sister also knew that. As such, her emotions weren't affected by her second sister's doubtful words. After all, anyone else would have reacted the same if they heard their loved one's fire of life rekindled. Swish. Victoria vanished without another word and arrived at the memorial hall, appearing beside Valerie. Tears ran down her cheeks the moment she confirmed Vivian's soul lamp had rekindled with a small fire of life. The rekindled fire of life did not indicate her fourth daughter had come back to life. Such a small fire of life did not represent her fourth daughter's life status. It did, however, represent the life status of Vivian's offspring. It's true. Victoria wiped her tears of joy and briefly relished in the newfound happiness before her gaze flashed with resolution as she made a decision. I'll be joining the second team headed for the Black Rose Kingdom. Are you going to resume the search again, second sister? Vera asked with concern, having followed Victoria back to the memorial hall. Victoria nodded. You already searched for 18 years without any success. Do you think this time will be any different with the same method? Vera asked. Vivian's child very likely doesn't have a spatial affinity. Thus, looking for a 20-year-old child with a space attribute detector is impossible. Furthermore, we don't know how much time has passed since the fire of life rekindled. As such, Vivian's child could be anywhere. Heck, that child might not even be in the Black Rose Kingdom anymore, Vera added. I'm aware of that issue, third sister, Victoria acknowledged with a nod before saying, but no matter what, Vivian's child is also my grandchild, a direct descendant carrying the blood of the Celestis family. My search will not end until the child is found and brought home to where that child belongs. Perhaps it's also a blessing that Vivian's child didn't inherit her spatial affinity at birth, Victoria sighed with mixed feelings. She was partly disappointed that her fourth daughter's child wasn't born with spatial affinity. But at the same time, she was also glad because the child might have been able to survive the outside world thanks to that exact reason. Not all descendants of the Celestis bloodline necessarily have to possess a spatial affinity. However, it was still rare not to inherit it at birth. After all, there weren't many families with a stronger elemental bloodline than the Celestis family spatial bloodline. As such, Victoria still held on to a small glimmer of hope that the family spatial attribute detector malfunctioned or it was simply too old and outdated to detect the spatial affinity in her lost grandchild. Grandchild. Of course, there was also another possibility as to why she failed to find her missing grandchild. Even after 18 years of searching before her grandchild's fire of life suddenly extinguished, the search range was simply too small. While it was improbable, it wasn't impossible. It could be that she had missed her missing grandchild every time by searching in the wrong place at the wrong time. However, there wasn't much she could have done about that. It was too dangerous for her family, and she would have also brought danger upon her missing grandchild if she had expanded her search. After all, people who wanted them dead would definitely start looking for her missing grandchild as well, and only on a much grander scale. Well, I won't stop you, second sister. However, you must remember, safety first, Vera reminded solemnly. Don't worry, third sister. I have a feeling this time will go well, Victoria assured before convincing herself, this time, I will find my grandchild for sure. Although it was a mystery why an extinguished fire of life could be rekindled, that was not important. Her lost grandchild was still alive, that was the most important. Right. You have that now, Vera remembered. Victoria had an obsession with finding her missing grandchild. That led her to develop a rank 5 detection tool that could detect all members with the blood of the Caelestis family and spatial affinity within a 10-kilometer radius. Although she failed to complete the magic tool before her grandchild's fire of life was extinguished, she was given another chance to finally use it and make up for one of her life's regrets. Can I also? No. Valerie's request to join her grandmother's trip was quickly denied before she could finish asking. As such, she pouted unhappily. Nevertheless, she didn't dwell on it. After all, they already had this conversation regarding her permission to venture outside. That said, having listened in on her two grandmothers' conversation, she finally learned the meaning behind the small fire on life inside her fourth aunt's soul lamp. Since the person was only 1 year older than her, which was very close to her age compared to everyone else, she quickly developed a strong curiosity toward this cousin, whom she suddenly had and never met. I wonder if my cousin outside is a boy or a girl. Valerie silently wondered. She also wondered what her cousin looked like and what kind of person her cousin had become growing up outside the territory. If her cousin was a girl, they could become best friends. But if it was a boy? Well, I'll have to see what he's like first, Valerie thought. They couldn't be friends if her cousin were a perverted man. While Valerie was having her own thoughts, Victoria had already bid her farewell to Vera before ripping open the space. Wait for me, my grandchild. I will definitely find you and bring you home this time. Victoria vowed as she slipped inside the ripped space and disappeared. Without parents or the family's support, her grandchild would have suffered a lot while growing up outside the territory. Even now, her grandchild must still be suffering. Black Rose Kingdom, Blackthorn City. The unique phenomenon of the concentrated mana beam descending onto Henrietta's palatial magic tower continued recurring for half a day. Many people made blind speculations and assumptions regarding the cause behind the unprecedented phenomenon without a definite answer. And when it ended, they were left with even more doubts and questions as to why it stopped. The entrance to Henrietta's palatial magic tower could be seen crowded with visitors from the start to the end of this never-before-seen event. In fact, the crowd grew several times compared to its initial size. However, no matter who came, without any word from their witch queen, everyone was turned away at the entrance to the palatial magic tower by Henrietta's personal servants. Only the involved parties actually knew what happened. At that moment, Henrietta could be found seated, cross-legged on her bed with her eyes closed in meditation, bare without any clothes on. Sweat perspired on her fair body, and her smooth skin still glistened with a tinge of warm redness, a lingering effect of her strenuous dual practice with Vaan, which had abruptly ended due to the sheer volume of mana absorbed into her small body, propelling her to make a breakthrough. Meanwhile, Vaan observed Henrietta from a distance, still bare, after retreating to the edge of the room out of consideration of possibly interrupting her advancement. The intensity of his intrigued and curious gaze made it unclear whether he was studying the flow of mana or simply admiring Henrietta's naked beauty. The sheer volume of mana gathered in the room had completely eclipsed the pink atmosphere they had painted together, turning it into a sea of ocean blue. 3 streams of concentrated mana poured into Henrietta's heart in great quantity like whirlpools in the sea. The speed of mana absorption was far greater than any which Vaan had previously met. Space and time itself seemed to have been warped and twisted, making the room appear larger than it actually was. At the same time, nothing else seemed to matter besides the 8th mana ring forming around Henrietta's heart. It was the sole focus in the room. The brilliance of Henrietta's mana rings made her body appear semi-transparent, allowing any observer to witness every single revolving mana ring around her heart in different sizes and speeds. An early stage high witch only had 3 mana rings, but Henrietta, as an early stage transcendent witch, had 7 mana rings. Furthermore, the 8th mana ring was forming at that very instant. The enormous amount of mana required to form the 8th mana ring revealed the sheer difficulty of the underlying task. Such a quantity of mana wasn't something a high witch's mental strength could control at once. Heck, even an average transcendent witch's mental strength might not be enough. Vaan could see that the size of Henrietta's 7th and incomplete 8th mana rings were noticeably larger than her previous mana rings. The mana and mental strength demanded for their formation was only a completely different scale to the previous mana rings. He did not doubt Empyrean Scarlet Sea was assisting Henrietta with the formation of her 8th mana ring. At the same time, he could see how Henrietta became a transcendent witch so easily. After all, with an unfathomable existence for a master like Empyrean Scarlet Sea helping, how could she not become a transcendent witch so easily? Forming the first 3 mana rings to become an early stage high witch was only the beginner stage. These mana rings were the smallest, thus making them the easiest to form. As such, the first 3 mana rings could also be called the 3 minor rings. However, Henrietta's 4th to 6th mana rings were evident larger but not as large as her 7th and incomplete 8th mana rings. As such, they could be considered the 3 middle rings. It only took 3 minor mana rings to become an early stage high witch but 3 middle rings to be a peak stage 1. The demand for mana and mental strength was on a different scale. As such, it was no wonder that many failed to take the next step forward. They were ill-prepared due to miscomprehension. Finally, the 7th and incomplete 8th mana rings were on a different scale of their own. Vaan considered the mana rings at this step to be the major rings. Judging by the power of each major ring, he estimated Henrietta needed to possess 4 major rings to reach the peak of the transcendent rank. In other words, a peak stage transcendent witch would have 10 mana rings, 3 minor, 3 middle, and 4 major. But how would a witch advance beyond the transcendent rank? There was only so much space around the heart, and it would be used up by this step. As such, it wasn't realistic to continue forming new mana rings by this point. Essentially, a new method of advancement had to be used to progress further beyond this point. That matter aside, Vaan was curious how much stronger Henrietta would become after becoming a mid-stage transcendent witch. After all, she could deter the 3 empires with peak transcendent level combat power despite her actual cultivation only being at early stage transcendent witch. Would the cultivation of mid-stage transcendent witch allow her combat power to enter the ranks of demigods? Vaan figured it was most likely, but not immediately. Henrietta would still need time to stabilize cultivation, adapt to her new power, and improve pre-existing spells before she reached such a level of combat power. Nevertheless, seeing Henrietta's advancement was progressing smoothly with Empyrean Scarletzia's assistance, Vaan shifted his focus to himself. Although he had made some gains from their dual practice, his harvest was not to his satisfaction. This wasn't surprising, given the short period of their dual practice. System log. Objective Mission 3, collect 5 Transcendent Witch level Primal Essences. Reward, a random Transcendent Witch level Specialized Magic. Progress, 1 out of 5 Transcendent Witch level Primal Essence. Fire Affinity, 80% 82%, 2%. Defense, 1150 5. Strength, 1212 25, 25. Fire Law, 5% 5.001%, 0.001%. As Vaan calmly reviewed his improvements, he became pleasantly surprised by one particular section. Based on his own understanding of the universal laws, he figured 5% law comprehension was the absolute limit permitted to beings below the divine rank. Unless some conditions were satisfied, one would not improve their comprehension of the law, no matter how great their perception was. However, that bottleneck was finally breached. Vaan had gained something special from his dual practice with Henrietta, making it possible. Although he had yet to figure out what that special something was, at the very least, he understood his comprehension of the fire law was no longer restricted. What an unexpected gain, Vaan smiled silently. After Vaan finished his self-evaluation, he shifted his attention back to Henrietta, who was nearly done condensing her 8th mana ring with Empyrean Scarletzia's help. As he observed Henrietta's advancement, he realized a few things based on the staggering amount of mana consumed. Firstly, despite possessing a cheat-like existence, such as Empyrean Scarletsia, to aid her cultivation, Henrietta could not progress further than the early stage Transcendent Witch rank. That was because there was never enough mana to keep up with her consumption rate in forming new mana rings. That said, given Henrietta's status and power, accumulating the necessary quantity of mana for her advancement shouldn't be impossible. As such, it wasn't that she couldn't advance, she simply chose not to. The reason was quite simple, Empyrean Scarletsia wanted Henrietta to consolidate her cultivation and build a firm foundation before permitting her to advance further. After all, Empyrean Scarletsia had helped Henrietta become a transcendent witch with brute force. Such a method required time for her to adjust, adapt, and master. Alas, the flood of mana resulting from Vaan's dual practice with Henrietta forced her to advance anyway. On that topic, Vaan was quite curious about how the transcendent witches achieved their level of power. After all, they couldn't possibly all have an undying level master like Empyrean Scarletsia to guide and assist them. Suddenly, Vaan shook his head and put his miscellaneous thoughts aside. Based on his observation and conclusion, Henrietta would spend considerable time in isolated training after her advancement to consolidate her power. As such, there was no need to stick around and expect further dual practice together anytime soon. They had already reaped considerable benefits from each other. Vaan also wasn't so desperate for physical intimacy that he would need to wait on a woman to achieve it. As such, Vaan decided he would leave for his journey after he finished guarding and ensuring Henrietta's smooth advancement without incident. Meanwhile, a group of witches suddenly appeared on the southern outskirts of Blackthorn City via a spatial portal. Victoria sighed as her gaze fell on the grand black city filled with soaring magic towers ahead. If she hadn't found out her 4th daughter's child was still alive, she wouldn't have returned to the Black Rose Kingdom to look again. Under Queen Henrietta's rule, the Black Rose Kingdom never hunted the great house of Caelestis. It could be considered one of the safest lands for their family to settle down. But ironically, it was also in this very land that the great house of Caelestis lost the greatest talent it had seen since the dawn of magic. As a result, the great house of Caelestis' relationship with the Black Rose Kingdom had become estranged. Victoria would avoid coming to this land if she didn't have an important purpose. It contained too much disappointment and sorrow for her to bear. Given the convenience of space magic, it would only take mere minutes to reach Blackthorn City from Black Dragon Peak. Unfortunately, she still had to respect the ruler of the land and follow the rules. As such, it ended up taking half a day to acquire the border pass to enter the kingdom, something that shouldn't have taken so long in the past. It was unexpected that we had to wait half a day to be granted border access, but at least we are here now, Second Lady, a spatial attribute elite servant at the peak stage senior which rank said, noting Victoria's expression. The Black Rose Kingdom is currently undergoing great changes. It's no surprise if security becomes a little strict. Victoria shook her head with a sigh before prompting the group, alright, let us enter the city. Yes, Second Lady, the elite group answered. Shortly after the group stated their affiliation and purpose at the city entrance and received their city permit, Victoria led them directly to the palatial magic tower. At the same time, she didn't forget to check the radar-like screen on her special sensory-type magic tool as it scanned the surroundings. She became ecstatic the moment a red dot appeared on the upper middle part of the screen. It implied there was someone with spatial attributes or the blood of the Caelestis family in the city. However, she suddenly saw several more red dots appear a split second later, and they were all congested in the same location. Such a sight was like getting splashed by a bucket of cold water. It woke her up and chilled her excitement. Recalling the family had sent another group to the Black Rose Kingdom ahead of time, Victoria sighed with disappointment. Second Lady. It's nothing. Let us keep going. Yes, my lady. Meanwhile, the moment Vaan confirmed Henrietta's advancement succeeded without an issue, he silently left via spatial shift. He made a quick stop at a couple of stores to buy a few essential items such as medicines, clothes, spices, silverware, and bedware. Afterward, Vaan entered a small public restroom and never came out. A poor soul waited 2 hours to unload his waste before realizing the person who entered the toilet before him was nowhere to be seen. The person seemed to have vanished into thin air. After all, there was only one exit, and it wasn't used after entry. Where could the person have gone? Great Rathalos Empire, Southern Border Checkpoint. At that moment, Vaan was queuing in line with a crowd, waiting to pass the security check to enter the Great Rathalos Empire. He was dressed in plain, semi-ragged clothing, seemingly worn out from long travels. Although he still retained the general traits of a dark-skinned person, his facial appearance, height, and body structure had all been altered. He appeared more ordinary, shorter, and a little thin but still muscular, something he could easily achieve with a little makeup and his newly developed body reformation technique derived from his bloodline transformation. No one who saw him would be able to guess who he was. Vaan had purposely traveled an extra 1,000-odd kilometers just to use the southern border entry. It was the only logical point of entry to roam the Great Rathalos Empire with an official, unsuspected identity. After all, the northern and western borders were either heavily guarded or completely cut off. The eastern border was not even an option. As such, there was only the southern border left. Thousands of warriors queue up at the southern border to enter the Holy Land of Warriors every day. Thus, security was a little more lax. Of course, given Vaan's strength, he could have simply entered the land directly with his original appearance. However, his status was sensitive, and any reckless act could cause international disputes and stir countless countries into action. Going through a little inconvenience to avoid the constant pursuit and pestering of flies was the safest and most worthwhile choice. It was also wrong to underestimate the unknown just because he had acquired strength. More importantly, even if he couldn't be killed, he could still be annoyed. Name and purpose, the border guard inquired with a dull look, having repeated the same tedious process thousands of times daily. Vandalin Pendragon. I've come to train, Vaan calmly answered. The border guard thoughtlessly nodded as he recorded the information to issue Vaan's identity card when his pen-holding hand suddenly paused. He glanced up and scrutinized Vaan's scrawny yet lean appearance with a somber look. The moment Vaan declared his name to be Vandalin Pendragon, it wasn't just the border guard who gave him a careful look. In fact, everyone who heard him looked over, some with astonishment, some curiosity, some with disdain, and some with concerns. There were also a few who appeared like they were about to witness an interesting show. Vandalin Pendragon, was it? Is that your real name? The border guard solemnly sought Vaan's confirmation. It is. Vaan calmly nodded before asking casually, is there a problem? The border guard stared at Vaan for some time but couldn't find any visible signs of dishonesty in his expression. Thus, he believed him. But because of that, he also didn't know whether to feel sorry for him or not. Is there a problem, huh? The border guard's stern expression relaxed as he rubbed his forehead with a wry smile. Listen here, brother, officially, I am required to write your name as is on your identity card. That being the case, however, if you don't want to look for trouble, you better not go around declaring your name to other warriors. Many, if not everyone, will not take such an impressive name lightly, the border guard warned out of the goodness of his heart. Naturally, Vaan knew what kind of stir the name, Pendragon, would cause in a dragon-worshipping country like the Great Rathalos Empire. But that was also precisely why he had chosen it. Changing his name and appearance to hide his true identity didn't mean he had to be low profile. Being low profile would be restrictive and counterintuitive to his plans for the Great Rathalos Empire. I am aware of that and will keep your words in mind. Thank you, Vaan replied to the border guard cordially with a polite smile. However, Vaan had long drawn attention to himself. No doubt, there were many warriors in the line who were already thinking about challenging him to a duel. After all, if they could defeat a Pendragon, it would be something to be proud and boast about, even if the person was weak. Take care, the border guard casually said. After Vaan received his identity card, he proceeded past the border checkpoint and stepped into the barren land of the Great Rathalos Empire. Rocky pillars, sandy soils, and dusty winds immediately greeted him beyond the mountain pass, where the checkpoint was situated. A trail of stones could be found wedged into the sand, forming a clear road through the maze of rock pillars. It would eventually lead him to a human settlement if he followed it. However, Vaan paused after taking a few steps. 2 warriors who had passed the checkpoint before him obstructed his path. They glanced at him and grinned, eyes burning with fighting spirits. "Hey, buddy. You must be seeking to train and gain some experience if you have chosen to come to this land. How about a friendly spar?" one of the 2 bulky warriors suggested. "Hey. I would also like a turn, too," another voice sounded from Vaan's rear as more warriors approached them, one after the other. The one who spoke belonged to a tanned male with well-defined muscles and red hair, the most common traits of Dunins, people of the sand. "Surely, this brother won't turn me down, right?" the Dunin pressed, further adding, "After all, you must be quite bold if you weren't worried about others hearing your name back at the checkpoint." "Me too. I would like to spar. One shouldn't fear a challenge while they are in the great Rathalos Empire. This is the holy land for warriors. Fighting every day is the norm." "That's right. Count me in as well. I would also like to spar with a Pendragon. I want to see if he is worthy of such a name. Don't forget about me." The gathering warriors voiced their intentions to spar with Vaan, one after the other. Some did so to satisfy their vanity and make themselves look better after defeating him, and others did so to test him. Even if he didn't look the part, a person carrying the name Pendragon had to have some special qualities. Otherwise, the person was only looking for suffering by coming to this land. Spars are fine. However, my time is limited. Why don't you all come at me all at once and let us be done with it quickly? Vaan casually suggested. "I can take you all on." "Tui." A Dunin warrior spat at his suggestion and barked, "You are looking down on our warrior's integrity. I can't believe you have the nerve to suggest such a thing to us, Pendragon. How is that fair for you?" "That's right. We only want to fight you, fair and square, Pendragon." Even if everyone could defeat Vaan with such a method, it wouldn't be something they could brag about. Using numbers to defeat a Pendragon. What was there to be proud of? When you want to spar with someone, you must look at their strength first. "Even if you all come at me, it won't be fair to you all, Vaan." "Humph. Even if you speak the truth, it's not right, Pendragon. You have your confidence, but we have our warrior's pride." "I'm not convinced. Let me see your strength." Many warriors hesitated to fight Vaan due to their pride, but some didn't care. They just wanted to defeat Vaan and bolster their reputation. "I defeated a warrior surnamed Pendragon as soon as I entered the country. How good would it be if they could make such a claim?" Under such a temptation, several warriors immediately charged at Vaan after voicing their intention to fight. Of course, Vaan didn't intend to go easy on such shameless and selfish people. He immediately meted out punishment with his iron hand of discipline. Whack! A Darkan warrior, seemingly twice Vaan's body mass, was suddenly smacked squarely on the cheeks. His huge body was sent flying like the wind and crashed into a small rock pillar over 30 yards away. Boom! The impact shattered the rock pillar and caused it to crumble to the ground, burying the Darkan warrior underneath it. Although the aura of a peak-level rank 2 aura master shielded the Darkan warrior from getting crushed to death, it was impossible to get out unscathed. Several bone fragments were guaranteed. Hiss! Every assailant forcefully halted their steps in shock and fright while the observers sucked in a deep breath of cool air and broke into cold sweats. It only took a single slap to wake them from their willful dreams. Sure enough, a person bold enough to carry the name Pendragon wouldn't be a pushover. "Who's next?" Vaan nonchalantly asked. The closest warriors to Vaan immediately took a step back with awkward expressions. Their faces became hot from embarrassment and shame, but they also felt as if they had been slapped as well. It didn't take a genius to realize how much strength was put into that single slap. It contained the force of a rank 3 body refiner, at the very least. Meanwhile, everyone else was only rank 2 body refiners or aura masters. What kind of spar could they possibly hope for by challenging the Pendragon? They were simply asking for a beating. But who could have known such a small body would possess so much strength? Suddenly, all the warriors who thought they could gain fame by defeating Vaan felt ashamed. There was no quick road to success. Their glorious future could only be forged by the blood and sweat of their hard work. "No one? Then, I'm leaving. I'd like to have a spar with you, sir." Seeing that the warriors cleared a path for him with their heads hung down, Vaan was prepared to leave when another person expressed their intent to fight him. Vaan glanced and noticed a Solaran warrior who had just arrived. This newcomer had, more or less, heard and seen why the crowd of warriors was gathering around him. Despite that, he did not cower from his desire to spar, as seen from the eager gleam in his eyes. "Mid-stage Aura Grandmaster," a rank 2 body refiner Dunin warrior uttered after the Solaran warrior revealed his aura and fighting spirit. Everyone immediately retreated some extra distance to make room for them with tacit understanding. There wasn't anyone among the rank 2 body refiners and aura masters that could be the Pendragon's opponent. However, a mid-stage Aura Grandmaster was a different story. Perhaps the newcomer could give them a good fight to watch. Although everyone had given up their challenges, watching those stronger than themselves fight was also beneficial for them. "Come at me then. Then, please pardon my offense." The exchange was brief before the Solaran warrior coated his entire body in a red aura and lunged straight at Vaan with a strong fist. The force and momentum carried behind this fist were enough to shy away the rank 2 body refiners and aura masters, discouraging them from challenging the person. They all knew it wasn't a force they could endure without serious injuries. Nevertheless, Vaan casually caught the fist with his palm. Boom! The impact generated a strong shock, causing the sands and stones beneath Vaan's feet to blow away. However, Vaan himself remained firm in his place like an immovable mountain. Such a situation was beyond the Solaran warrior's imagination. He had gravely miscalculated his opponent's strength, having assumed them to be roughly equal. Unfortunately, his opponent had not shown all his strength. No one expected this. After all, every day and every year, the strength of warriors journeying to the great Rathalos Empire for more extensive training was no more than low-level rank 3 and no less than low-level rank 2. As such, the Solaran warrior's strength was already above the norm. Who would have known he would run into another person whose strength was even more perverted than his at this time? He could only count himself unlucky. That said, the Solaran warrior was only surprised, not discouraged. Even if his opponent's strength was high-level rank 3, he still wished to spar with such a person. A man afraid of defeat would never be able to taste the sweetness of victory. Everything had happened in an instant. After the contact of the first blow, the Solaran warrior wanted to retract his fist for a follow-up attack. However, his wrist was by Vaan's vice-like grip, and his vision blurred following a powerful pulling force. Swoosh! Vaan hurled the huge body of the Solaran warrior through the air like he was throwing away the trash. Although the move seemed very casual, the latter could not resist the force behind it and regain his sense of direction and balance in midair. He smashed into multiple rock pillars like a ragdoll, chipping away small chunks of rocks with each impact before face-planting into the ground over 100 yards away. Hiss! The spectators sucked in another mouthful of cool air as they witnessed the scene. Everyone realized they had severely underestimated Vaan's strength, even though he did not look that strong. Even a high-level rank 3 body refiner would not have been able to throw the Solaran warrior so far so effortlessly. After these two fights, no one else present made trouble for Vaan. As such, Vaan resumed his journey, following the rock path leading him to the next human settlement. However, he only traveled 5 kilometers before another newcomer caught up to challenge him and confirm the spreading rumors. Such a situation repeated a dozen times by the time Vaan reached the first human settlement located 60 kilometers from the border checkpoint. In the great Rathalos Empire, many warriors were not afraid of challenging stronger opponents to gain insights. Such spars were considered asking for pointers, but only the stronger opponents showed patience and lenience. Alas, Vaan did no such thing. Every challenger was ruthlessly sent flying into the distance in a single exchange without an exception. As such, none of his challengers managed to gain any valuable fighting experience or insights. Sunrock Bazaar. Sir Pendragon, we're finally here, a Dunin warrior hastily said after rushing to catch up to Vaan. The Sunrock Bazaar was a huge marketplace-turned city comprising more than 300 interconnecting rock pillars via wooden and rope bridges. Open stalls could be found on all levels, hustling and bustling with activities and people. No matter where Vaan looked, fabrics of various colors could be seen hanging everywhere, providing both shade and cover. However, Vaan could not enjoy this rare sight as he felt a growing headache from hearing the Dunin warrior's voice. Of the dozen or so challenges he received along the way, half belonged to this Dunin warrior. Furthermore, he was responsible for the other half. Vaan couldn't help but wonder if this annoying person enjoyed being hurled by him. Otherwise, why would he keep coming back for more?